In this video we're going to give you 5 reasons why you absolutely need a forest plan if you are considering buying or managing a woodlot or forested area. In reverse order, number 5, establish your inventory. How do we do that? We hire a forest marker and a forest specialist like Brett Dixon.
What Richard and I did once we had the forest under the forest management plan, we laid out some different ideas of what to do. And in the pine plantation last year, we did its first thinning. So what we did there was we took out 1 row, left 3 rows, and that allows some light to get into the forest and allow that natural regeneration to take place, because we've got lots of really good seed source of all this beautiful sugar maple and cherry and oak and stuff like that. So he's also got some mature hardwood forest and ridges. It's just a real spectacular forest. So what I did is I broke it down into different compartments or different management areas and offered advice on each one of those areas to achieve the objectives. A lot of the first thinning of the pine might not generate that much revenue, but it's a way to keep it productive and keep the forest healthy.
Your forest plan is going to tell you how much wood, what type of wood you have per acre, whereabouts it is on your land, so you'll be able to see exactly where it is, and you'll be able to understand when you do select log, that you're going to go around and take out the weak ones, the ones with burls, the ones with diseases, the ones that aren't doing well. You're going to clear those out. Where there's maple, for instance, or ash together that are really good soil logs, you might select 1 out of 5 or 6, or maybe 3 out of 5 or 6, depending on how closely they grow to each other. So that's another reason why we want to make sure that we know what we're growing, and we've cruised the whole area and we've marked the whole area. Then we can do responsible forest management, which ensures that we will have the best forest for the future. On the left we have an area where we've got a thick, dense canopy of ash, and there's hardly any light getting to the bed of the forest floor. And you'll see the difference between that area, which wasn't cut, and the area to the right, which was cut 2 years ago, where now the undergrowth is about 5-6 feet high, with all kinds of diverse plant life. We've got lots of maple come up, and a lot of the ash is not coming up. It's being pushed out by the maple, which is exactly what we want. So the diversity on one side, and then probably you could call it stagnation on the other side. That's one example of forest management working, and it proves how effective it is. Number 4 tells us the history. So we can, with a forest plan, we can look into the history of this area, which was once Huron land, and why is that important? So that we can maintain it and we can sustain it the way it was, or with a knowledge of how it was sustained and managed before we got hold of it, because as stewards it's our job to make sure that we leave it better than we find it. So part of the history here, it was this place was a nomadic area right back for thousands of years by the Wyandotte, who were the Hurons, the local Huron Indians, very peaceful tribes. And they would be nomadic. They'd come through the land and they'd take the timber and they'd use the forest for living in, and then they'd move on. Later on, around the 1600s, it was picked up by the European settlers. And that's when large areas would be cleared, and these walls everywhere, these rock walls everywhere, were there clearing the fields for planting. So maybe back in the 80s, I know it was mainly field here. What we're seeing here is 30-year-old trees, and you can tell how old a red pine is by each one of these sticks that sticks out to the side. That's 1 year of growth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I've counted up, there's 35. So I know that these red pine in this stand is 35 years old. That's part of the history of this plantation. It's important that I know how old these trees are to plan for the next 35 years. And they'll be here, they'll live 150 years, these trees, if they're well looked after.
These trees were planted in rows, really just to establish a forest. A lot of it was to stabilize those soils. It's really sandy here, so a lot of those soils, erosion was a problem. So these trees were planted in rows just to get that forest established. But now they get to an age probably about 30, 35 years old, and it's time to thin them, because if you look if you look back, the forest here is still very dark, and not a light is penetrating to the forest floor. So by doing that first thinning, we're going to allow some light to get to the forest floor and encourage that natural regeneration, what we've done sort of on the north side here. We're thinning these forests in a sustainable way. Like we're taking 25% out this first time, just that right amount to allow that forest to keep growing. And every product that we've taken out of here is basically, it's sequestered carbon.
Number 3 is knowledge is power. We'll call it knowledge is power. That's what a forest plan gives you. It allows me to understand how the animals are moving through here and how the tree species and the animals work together. For instance, in the north, I've got an area that I've kept about 5 acres that's closed, very, very tight red pine. The raptors love it, the owls love it. And these open areas behind me, they use them like highways. The owls and the animals will use these like highways. The deer, you'll see tracks through here all the time. The more I understand how the forest works naturally, the more I can keep the forest intact. If we keep the land natural and we harvest with authority and with knowledge, then it benefits the animals, it benefits us. We can use the place recreationally without doing damage, and we're ensuring that their habitat is not eroded. Number two, the number 2 reason why we have a forest plan is, and most people would say number 1, in fact a lot of humans say it's number 1, is that I get 75% off my taxes by putting in a forest plan. So if you own a woodlot that's 10 acres or larger in Ontario, you can get 75% off your property taxes, which is not insignificant. And the number 1 reason why we have a forest management plan is to protect the forest. What we don't want to do is cut these large tracts of land up into individual severed lots that we all make money from at the expense of the forest. As soon as you run a cut line down a forest, you are affecting 300 yards or 300 feet either side of that cut. So if I run a forest cut down, say the size of 2 roads, I'm affecting 600 feet of the forest. It's called the edge effect. That stops animals that would at one time be moving around freely. They're coming along and they're going, wait a minute, that wasn't there before, that big space. I don't really like that. It's exposing their natural habitat to extra weather, to extra predation. It's upsetting the migration, and that's a big problem. One of the biggest problems we have in conservation here is that we tend to parcel off land, put car parks in it, and everyone goes in for a walk and a picnic, but it's not connected to other green areas. And we're finding that the other green areas are just as important as the forested areas that we're all so careful with, or should be careful with. So, number 1 reason for a forest management plan is to protect that forest for future generations, and my forest plan is 20 years in advance. So in 20 years time, I know what to do or what to pass on to the next person, and there's an entire history of responsible ownership, and we all need to start thinking like that. So here we have a potential veneer log, but definitely a saw log. You have a look up, nice and straight, really beautiful. So this is an ash. It's got the dots on it. That says that it's a saw log or potential veneer. They don't know if it's a veneer log until it's cut down and they can see there's no rot in the bottom. But what's interesting, and I've never seen it done before, is down here is they mark the base. So people can't, like a dishonest sawyer isn't going to come along, chop it, and then we're not going to know what it was or whether it was of value. On this side, this is firewood. It's got a solid line round it, and there should be, there's a basal marking on round here, and that will show that this log was taken and has been marked for cutting. If there wasn't a mark here, then it means that someone's come in and they've taken logs that aren't on the forest plan. So this ensures that nothing on your forest plan is taken by someone who isn't either paying attention or is trying to nick your wood. So, to recap, number 5, establish the value of the lumber and work out what your inventory is. Number 4 is learn your history so that you can continue to look after the land the way it has, or avoid the way it's been looked after. Number 3, knowledge is power. The more you know about the trees, the more you can harvest with authority and with sustainability in mind. Number 2 is 75% off your land tax, which is freaking awesome. And number 1 is we protect the forest. We don't come in here, we don't clear cut, we don't just make quick profit from it, we don't sever it, we respect it, we keep it intact for us and the animals. We work together, all of us, the way it's supposed to be. If you've enjoyed what we've done today, then like and subscribe.